welcome to Science Goes to the Movies, a look at the stories of science and how they change our culture. I'm Lisa Beth Kovitz. Remember back when everybody was doing the Birdbox challenge, trying to do complex tasks while blindfolded and sometimes alone? Well, fast forward to the COVID-19 quarantine, and that fiction is the real-life experience of today's guest. Holly Barner is the creative force behind Blind Motherhood, an online resource for individuals and their families who have been impacted by vision loss. Professor Bonner has a psychotherapy practice in New York City and teaches at both Wagner and Metropolitan College of New York. Welcome, Professor Bonner.
Thanks so much for having me, Lisa. It's so nice to talk to you today.
Good to talk to an adult, right?
Absolutely.
Because in the quarantine, you, like Mallory and Birdbox, have been home alone with your children. Is it as terrifying as it sounds?
When the global pandemic started with COVID-19, I would have said no. 5 months into it, I would have to agree. It's been very, very stressful. And I think it has been for a lot of parents trying to navigate this.
You have to do every single thing I say or we will not make it. Understand? You must listen as closely as you can.
But blind or sighted, motherhood can feel like you're rowing for days down a dangerous river. And in the relentlessness of modern parent perfection, other people's opinions loom large. So let's talk a little bit about stigma and social services. What do social workers need to understand about blind parenting?
Well, as a social worker myself, I have to say I was very surprised when I had my first child, how aggressive some of the social workers in the medical community in particular were. You don't often come across in your career a lot of blind or visually impaired people. In fact, there's a statistic that says only 1 out of every 7 Americans has ever met a blind person. So when you think about those numbers and you think about the probability of you coming into contact with a blind person as a professional, especially a social worker, those odds are pretty low. But I would definitely say to my colleagues that, you have to treat everybody as an individual and give them the respect that you would want to, receive. Having first had my child in the hospital, the social worker was very concerned with who was going to parent my child, who was going to be home helping me raise this baby. And when they found out that my husband worked the midnight shift, their concern was, well, how are you going to, get up and make the baby a bottle? How are you going to get up and, change a diaper if you're by yourself? And, my response was, I'm an educated woman and I've been preparing for this. I'm going to do it. And I did do a lot of preparation. And I think that that's the missing piece for a lot of social work practitioners. They don't understand that when you are congenitally blind or you have acquired vision loss or blindness and you are expecting a child, there is some preparation that needs to go into before you bring that baby home. I myself had a doll and I got services with the New York State Commission for the Blind, and I practiced carrying this 10-pound doll up and down the stairs, diapering the doll, making the bottles for the doll, putting the doll, latching it into the car seat. Now, obviously, I don't drive because I'm blind, but I still wanted to be able to do that if I had to take an Uber or a taxi. So there was a lot of prep work that went in there. And when I explained that to the social workers very calmly, and in a appropriate manner, then, they seemed like they were more kind of, I don't know, able to kind of take that in. That was, that once they heard that, they were able to digest it a little bit more.
So a good tip would be communication with your social worker.
Yes, and you have to think of where you're going to come in contact with the social worker. And for blind parents, your first real connection with the social worker will most likely be at the hospital before you leave with your baby if you're having a child. So that is something that you need to prepare for, and almost rehearse, your rationale in your head. Now, it's a shame that we have to do that, but unfortunately, when you provide them the information, as I said, it's easier for them to maybe feel more confident and comfortable letting you go.
In Birdbox, Mallory is totally organized. She has that fishing line so she can track her way back to the kids. She counts steps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. In real life, what are some of the tools of blind parenting?
Oh, well, the organization is so key. And what I really loved about Mallory is it really wasn't just her, it was also her partner, Tom. You know, as we see boy and girl kind of grow throughout the film, we see that Tom is also, you know, adopting these methods that Mallory has kind of put in place. I will tell you, when my children were infants, when they were little, I had bells that were tied to the bottoms of their onesies or their little, you know, their baby clothes. So I could hear when they were kicking or when they were motioning when they woke up. As they grew and we began to go out for walks or, you know, kind of explore the neighborhood, I also had little backpacks with tethers to them. A lot of parents refer to them as kind of the leash backpacks. I never thought of it as a leash. For me, it was more of a lifeline. You know, that this way, when my child got ahead, I was able to know where they were. I mean, that was my only way of being able to tell the distance between us. And I was also very verbal with my children. You know, I would give them audible cues and say, "Mommy can't see you. You need to come back." So as they began to get into preschool and got a little more independent, I then would move those bells and sew them to the back of their shirts so that I could hear my children jingling if we went out to the mall or on the way to school. And then I would just remove them when they got to school, usually by a safety pin. You know, this way I knew they were safe, but when they were alone with me, and a majority of the times they were, because my husband was working, I was able to audibly hear where they were. Now, the reaction to some people when they saw this was very different. Some people thought it was quite imaginative and you know, quite inspiring that you could see how you're able to adapt and overcome parenting with, you know, with a disability. Other people, I think, were quite put off by it, you know, and kind of compared the kids to the way that you would treat an animal. But for us, it worked. And I'm very happy that I did those things because it did ensure the children's safety. And that was Mallory's main goal. She was very realistic. She wanted to keep them safe. And she took every precaution to do so.
When they're in the movie, when they're on the river, one of Mallory's very little kids might need to risk everything to help Mallory navigate the upcoming rapids. And do you feel like your kids have to take on more responsibilities than other kids? And before you answer that, let me tell you that as a single mother with pretty good vision, my answer to that question would be yes.
You know, I think one of the biggest misconceptions that I've seen out and about with my children, even on walks, is people will stop and say to my girls, not to me, but to my children who are 5 and 7, "You are such a good girl for helping mommy. You take such good care of your mother." And you know what, part of that is true. You know, as you said, I do expect my children to help me, but I don't expect them to help me because I'm visually impaired. I just think that that's part of a essential family dynamic. Now, as my children have grown, I will say my daughter, my oldest, who's 7, has become a very big help with the fashion department because she is quite happy to go into my closet and tell me this is what you should wear, or this looks good for you, or when the malls were open, love to shop, love to tell me, you know, this is great, wear this, mommy, try this on. They know how to look for sale stickers. You know, if something's on sale, they'll try to help me save a few bucks if they can. You know, so I think that they are older souls, you know, because they are living with a mom with a disability. But I don't think that I'm giving them any more than I would if I was a fully sighted mother.
Please don't take my children! Do you hear that? The creatures.
You know, in the movie, we see, we watch a blindfolded Mallory wrangle and sometimes actually lift and haul 2 children at the same time. But is it a misconception that blind parents can't handle more than 1 kid?
You know, when I had my first baby and I went to the hospital, I had some issues, but people felt like, okay, you know, you have your child, you're doing good. When I had the second and I went back to the same hospital, I had many of the same nurses, completely different attitudes. They were very shocked that I had another kid. The response was, you had one, wasn't one enough? I can't believe you're back here. And my children are 19 months apart. So I think there is a misconception. I think there is more of a kind of precedent that one should be enough. And that's not the case. I know many blind parents who have been featured on Blind Motherhood and who I know socially who have 3, 4, and 5 children. Now, because my girls were so close in age, I would have one in a baby carrier and I'd have one holding my hands, plus I'd have a guide dog, strapped to the other hand. So there is a way for you to manage it, just as if you had twins or if you had, multiple children in your sighted life. But I think it makes people uncomfortable. The more society sees you out there as a blind parent with multiple children, the more stereotypes and bad attitudes you're going to come into contact with. And you as the parent have to understand that, but you also have to take a stand. And don't let anybody rock your boat, for lack of a better word. You have to do what you need to do to take care of those kids.
The Marvel character Daredevil and the Earthbender Tope Fong and Kenshi Takahashi from Mortal Kombat have been rated the top 3 most badass blind heroes. And for all of these characters, visual limitations have kicked their other senses into drive. So my question, Holly, is, are you a superhero, and what's that like?
I don't think I'm a superhero. I do get called Superwoman quite a lot, but I really don't think that has anything to do with my visual ability. I think that's my multitasking ability as a wife, mom, somebody who works. You just as a woman, I think that you're often kind of put in these multitasking, type of realities. But I'm definitely not a superhero. A lot of people have commented.
I might debate you on that. There, I mean, you can say that, but come on.
No, I don't feel like it. I feel like I've always been a very driven person. I have a lot of faith. I lean a lot on my faith. I'm also, aside from my academic life, I'm also a chaplain. So faith was a big motivator for myself when I lost my vision. So that is something that I lean on. But my kids get me up in the morning every day, and my husband, I wouldn't say he gets me up in the morning every day. If he doesn't want to do something, he might get me up a little bit sooner than I would like. But, family is everything. So you figure out a way to get it done. If you think I'm a superhero for doing that, then more power to you. I'm just a mere mortal.
But you came to blindness late in life. Is it a total reshaping of your brain to start focusing on non-visual cues?
Oh, yes. I mean, I was 32 when I lost my vision. I cannot tell you what a life-altering change that was. For the first 6 months after my bout with optic neuritis, I really had no vision at all. And as my optic nerve settled down with the help of the steroids, then the remaining vision that I currently have came more to light. But with that New York State Commission for the Blind, who came in and helped me as a newly blind person, I had to learn everything from crossing the street to making a sandwich, how to do my laundry, how to separate the closet. I mean, it really was a lot to take in, for sure. And there were many times that I found it a very humbling experience, because here you go, being a highly educated person, I had gone to an Ivy League university, and you're teaching me how to use a knife to make myself peanut butter and jelly. I mean, it's a big hit emotionally, mentally, physically. It took a lot of time to get adjusted to it. But once I think you come to terms with the way that your life is going to be, and a lot of that is kind of almost traversing through a grieving process, you're grieving the loss of your vision, and you come out the other end, you realize that you can do it, and you can have a very normal, fulfilling life, even with the family, if you so choose.
Superhero.
Stop it.
On This Is Us, Kate and Toby's son Jack is born with retinopathy of prematurity, an eye disorder that primarily affects infants born weighing 2 3/4 pounds or less. Blake Stadnick, the actor who plays Jack Damon on This Is Us, refers to Jack as a low vision character. And Holly, I think most of the sighted world imagines blindness to be a total blackout. But are there degrees of blindness?
Oh, yes. Just as you would say autism is a spectrum, blindness is a spectrum.
Oh,
so you have a lot of people that believe that if you declare yourself blind, or they see you walking around with the guide dog, that you're Helen Keller, and they expect you to go out to the water pump in the back and start pushing up and down on it. I have had people who have come up to me in public places and literally put their hands on my face. So they said, oh, roll down my arms and then you can feel me so you know who I am the next time. I know who you are because I can see you. I can see you. You're right here. I can see you. You know, it's very difficult to help the general public understand that there really is this very broad spectrum, from people who are low vision, much like the character on This Is Us, to people who are what they call totals. And totals are those individuals that are totally blind. So depending on the person's acuity, they may be able to see you much better than you think, or they may not. You know, the best thing that you can do is to politely ask if you have that type of relationship with the individual. I'm never offended when people ask me what I can see and what I can't see. What offends me is when people assume that I'm a liar because I don't fit the mold of what they presume a blind person is. For example, I was at a bus stop not too long ago before COVID, and I had my cell phone out. And I'm, you know, holding my cell phone at the bus stop, looking to see, you know, when the bus would be arriving. And I had a woman that was very, very irate and called me a liar right on the street. You're a faker, you're a liar, shame on you. You know, I mean, really just outright aggressive and nasty, because she had no concept that blind and visually impaired people like myself can use a dog, a guide dog, and also use the voice feature or accessibility features on their iPhone to get information. You know, never even crossed her mind. So, and I think a lot of that is generational. You'll find that a lot of people that are older, I would say, you know, in their 50s and above, seem to be more unaware of some of these new advances for people, and just the general definition of people who are blind and visually impaired and how that spectrum reacts. But also the younger generation, you know, they're the millennials. A lot of them very entitled and like to whip out their phone and just, you know, tape whatever they see is in front of them. And if they see somebody like me with the cell phone out and a guide dog, they can take a video and post it on social media that, you know, I'm a faker, you know, or a liar, because they have no concept of what the spectrum of blindness truly is.
Well, it's, you know, we talk a lot about the public perception of science, but it seems like the public perception of disabilities also needs some updating. What is it to be legally blind?
So a lot of people ask what legally blind is. Legally blind is you have a visual acuity of 20/200 or less. So what that basically means is you can put on glasses, but glasses are not going to help you see. The glasses that I'm currently wearing don't give me any type of visual help. What they do is they have a special lens in there to help protect my eye from the glare of the screen. So that's why I wear these glasses. But if you are legally blind and say you have an object that's 200 feet from you, this is going back to that 2200 number, the legally blind person would have to be 20 feet from that object in order to see it, where the average person that had 20/20 vision could remain 200 feet back and be able to see that object. So there is a big, you know, misconception about what legally blind is. Some people use the term legally blind quite often. I have found that people that I interact with tend to feel more comfortable calling me legally blind than visually impaired. Now, I would have to agree with them to a point, because I have no vision at all in my left eye. I see nothing out of that. But in the right eye, I do have that small pocket of vision. So visually impaired or legally blind to me are kind of interchangeable, but I think society as a whole prefers the legally blind term. They just don't always know what that terminology means.
You know, on This Is Us, Blake Stadnick, who plays Jack Damon, really is a singer and is really legally and not completely blind, just like his character on This Is Us. How important do you feel it is that this character is being played by Mr. Stadnick?
I think it's so important. I really do. Anytime I see a character that is blind in any type of TV or movie role, I really want somebody who is blind or visually impaired playing that character. I also love that the actor who's currently in that role, while he's handsome, he's not, you know, overly unattainable. You know, a lot of times you see women that will be cast in these blind roles, and they're absolutely stunningly beautiful and gorgeous. And what happens with that is, yes, it's easy on the eyes, right, for the sighted community to watch this character, but I also think it promotes an unnecessary type of empathy or sympathy that this woman has to be saved. Not every person who's blind and visually impaired is going to be stunningly gorgeous and stunningly beautiful. I mean, I'm a mom. I don't consider myself a superhero or, you know, a supermodel by any stretch of the imagination. But I do think it's important to have people that are blind or visually impaired showing what we go through, because they know firsthand, you know. And when you look at some of the debates that have happened in Hollywood and just in TV production in general, you know, the disabled community is really the last portion of the community to continually not have equal standing, you know, in production. You know, there was a very big debate well, I would say fairly recently, about people of color not being cast in these very coveted roles. And there have been some changes in that. And it's great to see women of color and men of color in all different casting and all different capabilities. But until we get to the point where if you are doing a story about somebody in a wheelchair and cast an actual wheelchair user, or somebody that's blind and cast somebody that's actually blind, or an amputee, you know, that actually has some type of limb amputated, I don't think we're there yet in Hollywood. And I think it's going to take a really long time to do that. Me personally, I'm a huge Hallmark fan. I love Hallmark holiday movies. I would love to see a heroine in one of my favorite Hallmark movies actually have a disability and have, you know, find love and have a great, you know, Christmas romance, you know, and be legally blind. And I've approached Hallmark about that. And the response that I get is, it's very difficult. It's very complicated. It's really not that complicated. There are blind actors out there. There are visually impaired actors out there. There are actors who are in wheelchairs that are out there. Find them, see their talent, and give them a part. It's not that hard.
Well, there is one very interesting blind actor working today in RuPaul's Netflix series, AJ and the Queen. Both the character Lewis and the actor who plays him, Michael Leon Woolley, are drag queens who have both suffered diabetic strokes that left them blind. And in the show, Lewis makes jokes about being Black, being gay, about drag and blindness. And lately we have taken a long, hard look at how to represent race and gender and sexual preferences in movies and on TV.
Were you born blind?
No. God took my sight when I was about your age for giving it to nice adults.
You think you're funny.
Oh, I know I'm funny. I had a diabetic stroke at 28, right after I told my very Christian father that I was a drag queen.
Oh, Holly, if you could give insight to a screenwriter, what would you say about depicting blindness and also depicting humor and blindness?
Well, I mean, listen, we have to laugh. I don't know who sent out the memo that if you have a disability, that you have to be serious all the time. I laugh at myself every single day with some of the things that I do with my children, with some of the experiences that I have in the classroom as a professor. You know, you just have to have humor. You have to, or you're not gonna make it through. Having a disability is very emotionally heavy stuff. It's a lot in your suitcase to carry in life, and you have to be able to unpack it and laugh about it. There's no other way to deal with it. For screenwriters, I think they need to take a kind of a page out of an actor's handbook. I mean, you see an actor is cast in a role. What's the first thing that they do? They do research. You know, so they need to go out there and literally sit with somebody or meet with people who have the disability that they're writing about to be able to capture that, you know, in a realistic way and show people from a human side. Don't make people feel sorry for the disabled population. We don't need your empathy. You know, I mean, your sympathy. Empathy would be nice, but you know, a lot of times it's just a misconception that, you know, that they feel so sorry for us. They don't know how to approach the situation, you know, from a real life perspective. What I love about the character that you're describing, I have to say, a lot of people are very surprised that the blind can sew in general. It's not even so much about being Black or identifying as gay. I mean, that's all okay, but throw in the sewing and, you know, we have a huge issue. And you're gonna laugh, but I knew we were gonna kind of maybe touch on this. Here's how I sew. And I don't know if you can see this on our lovely Zoom call, but this is a rubber ball that's cut in half. So the bottom of the ball is exposed, and I stick the needle right in the ball, so this way I can find where the needle is. And then I use something called a penny threader. And the penny threader will actually go through the eye of the needle, and I'll find my way in there, and that's how I thread my needle. Now, am I Susie Homemaker? No, but I have to sew buttons occasionally, and I'm not gonna just get up and go to the cleaners, you know, to have a button sewed on. This was one of the skills that I had to learn as a blind and visually impaired mother, you know, to be able to do what I needed to do. So it's funny how the focus was more on the sewing part. People could not understand how this person who was blind or visually impaired was sewing. Forget that he's Black, forget that he's gay. He sews. I can't get over it. I mean,
They did a great job. They did a great job in the show because he was making extraordinary, glorious, detailed costumes, and then they showed him coming right up and see. It was so well done. And I think that it's well done because that's his personal, real life, actual experience. Back to the point of the advantage of casting the real deal in the part.
Yes, I mean, I think, you know, having him definitely added a lot of value to the show in totality, you know, and also to his experience.
Holly, this has been so much fun, but unfortunately we are so out of time. Thank you so much for spending time with us.
Thank you very much for having me. It was really great to have some adult conversation and talk about these wonderful TV shows and movies.
You know, I hope when we get back on, you'll back into the studio. We can dig into some of these issues further in the studio.
I would love that.